Hello, Forest family. Welcome back to another edition of the FBC Extra Podcast. We hope you enjoyed your Easter holiday, and we also hope you've enjoyed our conversations with the elders. Today, we talk to another elder who is a parent of a staff member here at our church. Let's get to know Mark Hernandez.
I love the fact that we have one of our elders, Donnie Scarlett. His son is the pastor teacher at Forest, and we have our youth pastor, Reed Hernandez. His father is also an elder. So it's like, do you feel like the Ken Griffey Jr. thing where you're both playing for the same team, father-son?
Exactly right. We're both suited up on the bench, waiting for our turn.
That's awesome. You did tell me you can get every World Series winner since 67, is that what you said?
66 generally.
So that for talent shows, that's your special.
Yeah, so I call out a year and I have to think quickly, but sometimes I'll hit it right on.
You've got another grandchild that was just born.
That's right. Kellen Reed and May have had Kellen in February.
Yeah, so that brings you up to 4, 5? How many?
4 grandkids. Yeah.
Okay. Mm-hmm. How does that feel?
I love it. It's just sort of as I'm sure others would say, it's another round of watching and helping your kids and your family, grow up.
And it must be cool to have them all at Forest as well. I've got Mark in Gopher Buddies now, and Mila will be right behind him as well. Right. So it must be cool to have the families. And I know Carol's very involved in the women's ministry as well. That must be really cool to have that family dynamic all close to Forest.
Yeah, absolutely. Again, we're family, grew up in the life of the church. It's just played out again. It's just playing out here, essentially, with all of us, in our various roles and stages of life. So it's shepherding and maturing other younger believers, and then Reed and Maeve doing the same thing. And, all of us here together, it's a blessing.
And so what's interesting about your eldership for the church is that you have the experience of a bigger church as well. So talk a little bit about, obviously you're involved in a big church. Talk about that.
Yeah, so the big church experience was in our time that we spent as a family growing up in the Washington, D.C. area, just in the Northern Virginia suburbs. When we attended initially, had maybe 600 people, McLean Bible Church in Northern Virginia. And by the early 2000s, so that was from maybe 89 or 11 or 12 years, just really grew quickly. And by probably the early 2000s, the church was about 10 to 12,000 people on a week.
Wow.
Five or six services. So that was a good view of a church with big outreach, big ideas, big programs. You can see big ideas, big impact in the big church because you got a lot of people available to do many types of things in ministry, which is, if you think about the adage, 20% of the church does 80% of the whatever activities. So in a small church, that's 20 to 30 people showing up to do something in a small church, maybe. Yeah. So in 10,000 church, easily you got 200 or 300 people show up for a class, 200 people showing up for evangelistic outreach. That's a lot of people impact because you got numbers like that. So to see that there is, it encourages, it excites. I mean, there's a lot of, positive, just positive energy that brings to a church. People are like, oh, we're just so excited to be here. Yeah. This church really making an impact in our city. You do have a little bit bigger profile when you're a big church, for good and bad, right? The media there could often, hit on, McLean Bible Church. It's like they would in anything. Oh, they're the ones bringing traffic to our community or whatever. We don't really like the church. But in other senses, it was, a lot of people really appreciating that a big church could have a big outreach.
Your role as elder at a big church, what does that look like?
I think just because the nature of leadership over, again, a big church, which ultimately implies big organization, big budgets, as it should have. It needed a lot of attention to money, buildings, staff. And so as an elder, there was much of the attention was to those type of things. So you could feel at times that you're just you're like a member of a corporation's board, right? Yeah. So you really need to help that church faithfully execute its life as a church and not crash and burn because it's easy to lose track of financial accountability.
Yeah.
And again, for McLean, just top marks for how well they ran budgets and facilities, and so the elder role there did have a huge part of its attention to, hey, we've got this big thing, this church. It's a big organization. It could be, it could be an IT company, whatever, and we have to pay attention to it in that kind of way. So, but for a large staff, they were able to take a lot of the spiritual shepherding responsibilities in a smaller context, which I see here, and I've seen at the church we were previous to this one. Elders have much more of a personal engagement with the body in terms of how well are people growing in the Lord, how's their walk going, where are their struggles. You definitely have eldering in a smaller church context with those type of things essential to them, which I think are the things that should be central to an elder's life. And then also, again, you still have the facilities and the financial whatever. Again, it's more manageable at this size, and it doesn't overwhelm the attention of elders. So I think it's again, looking back and sort of evaluating really big church to small church.
Yeah, so you transition to a small church.
Yeah, so maybe a couple hundred people, and
you're elder there as well.
Right. Mm-hmm.
So you go from a humongous sort of body to a really, really small body. So what does elder at a very, very small church look like then?
Yeah, and that became more of every elder is acting as a pastor would act. So in that context, it was all the elders who are equipped and capable would preach when the lead pastor was out or whatever. The elders would lead at the communion table. Pastors would teach the Sunday schools. The pastors would counsel marriage situations. So in that sense, now all elders really have hands-on for the life of the church as really pastors. Yeah. So that was a really good adjustment, especially to my concept of what's the role of an elder. And when I came to Forest and the nominations were taken, one of the books that Pastor Tyler had at Elder Candidacy was Jeremy Rennie's Elders. It's a 9 marks book. It's a little simple, a little small, short booklet on what is the life of an elder in a church, whether it's big, small, whatever. Those components that Rennie talks about in that book are exactly the things that we were doing at the church previous to this one, Sterling Park Baptist Church. It's the things that you see done here at Force as well. The elders really being pastors to the body, and what that does means that a lead pastor like Pastor Tyler, our previous pastor, the weight of the church doesn't hang on their shoulders. To lead every gathering, to pray every prayer, to counsel every situation. Yeah. You definitely have elders as a shepherd team. Yeah, all sharing that part of the church leadership. So I think if I were a lead pastor somewhere, I would just be so thankful that you had guys, other pastors other pastors as elders who are helping shepherd the flock and share that burden.
Having come from the big background, having come from the small background, and now being at Forest, where do you put Forest? Because it feels to me like we're somewhat kind of in the middle, where we're not really a small church anymore, but we're not a mega church. Yeah. So how do you view it?
Yeah, I see a little bit of that it is in between us. It's not small enough. So if we were one service, I think you'd have a sense of a smaller body, smaller church. Everyone knows and sees one another on a Sunday. Yeah. And with the 2 services, it's like, we're bigger than that because now we're passing people like, I never see you. Yeah. We're like, are you new to Forest? No, I've been going here for 5 years. We are different services. Yeah. So that can definitely happen. But I'd probably say it has an in between. It's still small, right? I mean, it's small enough that it would seem that people don't feel any of your church leadership is at a distance, right? Yeah. It's like we're so big, I'll never talk to my senior pastor. He's just like, he's totally isolated a little bit because of size. Yeah, in a place like this, you still feel like, I know my pastors, I know my deacons, I know, the people that I engage with on a week by week basis, whether that's children's ministry or whatever. But there's definitely that element that says, hey, do we really know it? Who goes to this church and do I know them? And that's probably that aspect where you just feel like, hey, maybe we have a little bit of bigness to us. And the goodness of that is programs have bodies that are willing to serve, willing to do things. And I think that's that's a good thing.
Where does it behoove us to have sort of a big church mentality, and where does it behoove us to have sort of a small church mentality? Does it kind of depend? I mean, you've seen both sides of the coin on this one. Is there some things from both ends of the spectrum that we kind of say, well, maybe we need to do X, Y, and Z like a bigger church would do, and then maybe there's other things we say, okay, we want to do this more like a small church would do. Do you see parts of how that works?
I mean, the things you want to do like a big church. I mean, you know, they've got budgets, so
yeah,
all of a sudden their paper signs in the bathroom look better. You know, just that's not like it's like, oh, we want our paper signs to look better.
Yeah.
When you're bigger, you just have more resources to pay attention to a lot of little things. Mm-hmm. And in a smaller context, you just have to prioritize the things where you want to put money, put attention, put priorities. Again, big church can say, we can have a program for older men, we can have a program for 20-something guys, we can have a program for teenagers, run it all on the weekend, and you'll fill them all up.
Yeah.
You know, and here, if you say we're going to do something for men, you want to make sure that you make it concise enough that you draw everybody in.
Yeah.
That's an advantage that you see in big, is they can, you know, they're going to be able to reach a lot of different people all at once with different things. Yeah. And a smaller church has to be a little bit more strategic about that. Mm-hmm. Hey, how do we make sure, again, you can start anything today and find out it's going to pull somebody from something else. Yeah. And now then they're going to go to, they're going to go to this instead. So, but again, the small church has the important advantage of knowing each other in their spiritual life. Too many things can be lost in the shuffle of hundreds of people, thousands of people. Yeah. It's easy for people to be lost who are struggling, and you just feel like it's not. It can be either hidden or nobody flags it. But in a smaller context, people know each other, and you should be able to. Again, what I love about this church, and if you haven't experienced it, people show up for helping those who are sick and ill. Meal trains get filled up. So Caroline went through sickness back in the fall, and again, we consider ourselves still somewhat new, having come here end of 2018 full time, or living here in Lynchburg full time. Yeah, there were people that we didn't know. Yeah, showing up to bring us meals and to do things, and I think that's the heart of small churches. That's gonna happen, and you're gonna be able to again know someone forever, because you cross paths in a time where one was serving another, and this is the best way. So that's the strength and value and beauty of small congregations.
So obviously the 7 of you elders here at Forest, 2022 has presented a lot of building and grounds avenues and some others. Is that kind of where the focus is for you guys, as well as just general eldering biblically? Is that a big focus?
It's not a big focus in terms of like all the time. It just became a big focus, I think, just because a special situation that needed attention. But now that again, Lord willing, that's been addressed well, that's off on to someone else's plate. Okay. As it should be, who can give small things the attention that it needs to, because that's again the strength of the body is gifts, talents, and abilities the Lord brings together. He'll use those things. And you go back to the early church in Acts, where it's like we have this division. Do we need people to serve tables, but we also need somebody to teach and pray, right? Yeah. And why don't we divide that up so that teaching and praying or spiritual priorities are retained by the apostles at the time, and those who are serving, the necessity for serving to happen doesn't fall also on those who are teaching and praying. It's kind of after this spiritual responsibility. And so the same thing what happens here. That's how we see the division between elders and deacons, essentially. Elders are teaching, caring for spiritual surety and growth, and deacons are handling, setting up chairs, fixing light bulbs, that kind of stuff, and serving but still serving the body as well. We have widows, deacons, making sure that our widows are attended to. So our goal as elders is that a serving aspect that a deacon can take? Is that a spiritual priority, growth, or even consequences of sin, how that can have an effect in the church, and how do the elders weigh in and address things like that. So that's probably the separation I would see there. Yeah.
So where is the focus for the elders right now? What do you guys, I know you guys meet, you're always praying and overseeing stuff. So where right now are you guys kind of working through as a group?
Yeah. What the elders always are with Tyler's, encouragement and involvement is to know what the pulpit looks like in the days ahead. So Tyler will let us know, hey, here's what I'm thinking about preaching on, how long it'll take. Here are a couple of options. I'm praying through those. What do you guys think? So we're really thinking about what does the pulpit look like for the church going forward? Again, with Tyler taking the lead on that, but the elders definitely have input from that through, again, at Tyler's request. Again, we know what's happening there. And the other things are seeing that our interns and those who want to grow up in the life of the church, so go on to pastoring in their own right, have our support, attention, guidance for seminary versus not seminary, mission field versus not, church planning versus not. So I think those are maybe the higher elements. Mission roles themselves, how does the elders come alongside them and be a support, a place for counsel, a place for prayer, etc. So probably along those lines.
Reed has told me that you consider yourself an accidental missionary. So can you explain to me what that means?
Well, this goes back to 2007. I hadn't been out of the country necessarily. I hadn't been to Mexico once. I looked at missions as something somebody else does. I didn't feel like I had a heart for that necessarily. I don't know if there was fear of travel, whatever, involved in that. But for the most part, I was like, that's what maybe super Christians do, right? Right? And I got a phone call that summer that said, hey, the McLean Bible is going to send a team to Rwanda to do pastoral training. And so you're one of the elders on here at McLean, and we'd like to have an elder be part of this trip for training. So it was actually 6 other staffers from McLean. I was the sort of the elder representative. And as I was like, well, I don't know. I'm in my mind, I'm like, I don't, do I want to go to this or not? So I was like, hey, let me just pray about it, think about it. I had a sense that I don't know if I'm adequate for mission field. I don't know if I'm adequate to train pastors, whatever. And interestingly enough, I woke up the next morning. I used to wake up to Chuck Swindoll teaching, 30 minutes of Chuck Swindoll every morning.
I remember that growing up, yeah.
And I'm telling you, there's no joke. He was preaching on not feeling adequate as a believer.
Wow.
Yeah. So I was like, okay, I guess, Lord, that's part of the answer here.
There's no coincidences there.
So, I, the answer was yes. I'll go and be part of the team. I don't know. It just took one or 2 hours to be on the ground. You're like, okay, I already love what's happening. Being here, and then to have been part of meeting pastors in another country, which I thought was just it was great. You can see they're hungry. They don't have the ability to afford seminary. They don't have good seminaries in their own country, and to see them is like, we help us to know our Bibles, help us to know how to be pastors in our communities where essentially they're looked at like the everyman, help with every kind of problem, no matter what. Yeah, that was an eye opener, and I immediately was like, I love being in cross cultural ministry. It just sort of connected in this. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 mission trips later. Woo! That includes back to Rwanda, Burundi, which is a neighboring country to Rwanda, South Africa, Macedonia a couple times. So
wow,
yeah, just like if people are going and even it doesn't have to be a language barrier. Essentially, I'm usually interested. So I know that here they go to Guatemala. They were just starting that. That's when we got here. So that might probably be something I would be interested in the days forward.
One of the other ministries I'm excited to see your name on is the men's ministry. And I know I've heard your name sort of thrown out as someone who's going to head some of that up. So first off, talk about the meeting. How did the meeting go? I know we're kind of starting to try to get it off the ground again.
Yeah, it was a good meeting. A lot of good input. Guys I think they are anxious to see men coming together in some way. whether that's service, whether that's fellowship, and whether that's, again, growing as disciples. All of those aspects kind of came up in the things that people offered up in the conversation. So at that point, I think Steve was just like an intake, like, okay, we've all kind of heard it. Everybody can kind of look around the room and see, okay, there's definitely a movement to get guys together for fellowship. Okay, there's definitely a movement for guys to get together and serve in some way. I don't know what the next step has happened. Steve might know a little bit more about where people are, but there's at least I know of a few guys that want to do like fatherhood as a, and that's one thing that I've connected with more in detail. So we'll see that comes to pass soon.
So what kind of vision do you have? What kind of events or things would you kind of throw in if, as being part of it?
I mean, I think that, so much of discipleship, well, first of all, men together is always a good thing, right? A men together, because the Christian life is a call to imitate a lot of ways, right?
Yeah.
Paul says, imitate me as I imitate Christ.
Right.
And it's hard to imitate if you're not within proximity of other Christians. And so I think getting men together first and foremost just has its own value. And look, that guy, I love how he leads his family. I love how he serves his wife. I love how that guy prays. I love that I know that this guy does his Bible study in this kind. Those things aren't seen, but they have to be seen, and that happens when men gather. One of the biggest impacts for me as a Christian was in a small group going back when I was in my 20s. Carol and I are in our 20s, and we got put in a small group with by zip code, and our zip code happened to be almost all empty nesters, but a 20-something couple in there. But by watching these guys who had Christian walks for decades, I mean, it was like the Lord says, do you see this shape here that you need to fit into? Yeah. Right? That was just so impactful for me at the time. Again, I can go back to a closing prayer at the end of a small group. I walked out of the house like, Lord, you got to get me to where that guy is. And that simple prayer, it's like the Lord says, oh, yeah, that's what I was trying to get your heart to do anyways. Yeah. But now that that's done. So guys getting together, I think is just huge in and of itself. I think all discipleship comes from a fount of growing in knowledge, right? So in some way, whether we're serving, whether we're fellowshipping, to have some aspect of, let's remember that the Word of God is our number one intake as men, right? So with that as a central element for whatever we do, whether that's 5 minutes or whether that's hour-long teaching from somebody, we should reach for any of those little pieces and make those a part of what guys do when we're together.
Well, I'm excited to say that you and Carol are heading up the college ministry as well, and you've been doing that a little bit now.
Yes, it's 2019.
Okay. I know obviously COVID, same story for everybody, kind of revamping it. What does that kind of look like, and what is the college ministry? Because I was in the college ministry at Forest way back in the day. Okay. I won't date myself, but it's cool to see you guys pick up. Where do you meet? What does it look like?
Yeah. So the college ministry meets on Sunday mornings, underground at the Sunday school hour. It's been the goal for Carol and I to essentially try to convey wisdom to this season of life. We call it Next Ministry for a reason. College students are always thinking about what's the next thing, the next class, the next semester, where am I living, to which job I'm going to take, where am I going to live, and who might I marry, right? Yeah. All those are kind of next. With the idea that our scripture verse, kind of our prime scripture verse for that ministry is Colossians 3:2, which says, set your minds on things above. So again, if we'll live life as believers, thinking about the next age, that'll help us live this age with the right perspective, the right priorities, and so forth. And so we know that college students, they're really only attending a church away from home for, it's a little more than half of the Sundays in a year. So you have them for like half a year of Sundays for 4 years. And that's if they come in as a freshman and stay all 4 years. Yeah. So you actually have them less than 4, so maybe 3. Yeah. And then you got cut off because they visiting churches with friends, figuring out where to go. And then they might get connected and really anchor in end of sophomore year, junior, something like that. So it's just really a handful of weeks. And so our goal is to just convey wisdom in small pieces. So we do 3 and 4 week series.
Oh, cool.
Sometimes it's very practical Bible study.
Yeah.
How do you have a better prayer life? How to witness. We're doing a series now, like what are the faith challenges that come up in a conversation?
Yeah.
So, and then we spend time in some book of the Bible, just a quick overview. We'll hit Deuteronomy in 4 weeks. Let's just take away some big points in 4 weeks and let's keep moving, and everything to suffering in the life of a Christian.
Yeah.
And watch some videos for a few weeks and just have a good discussion about suffering. So that if they come for any number of weeks, we feel like we've just put in a little bit of wisdom in all of these different areas, so that they would be able to say, the church that I attended during college gave me practical wisdom tips in their college ministry. Well, I got verse by verse from the pulpit, Well, I got fellowship and closeness in our Sunday dinners together as a so we feel like we have a niche, and we come at it sort of with that goal, those goals in mind.
So if for anybody who's in college, or maybe they're a senior in high school and they're going to be transitioning out of Reed's youth group, when do they meet? What kind of events? What kind of things are you doing midweek? What does that look like?
Yeah, so mostly it's a Sunday morning ministry.
Okay.
We found it's pretty tough to get college kids back out here during the week. They, a lot of other things they've got on their plate, whether that's sports and intramurals or RA stuff or whatever. But we try to do everything on a Sunday, whether that's our socials. So we'll have lunches out at Underground.
Okay.
We might have breakfast during the teaching time. Small celebrations, celebrate our seniors, pray together, Thanksgiving. So as much as we can, centered there. So we only, if you come out once, and you can again be hopefully served well by the ministry on a Sunday.
I always get everybody out on the same question. If you could see any event in the Bible live with your own eyes, what would it be?
Our college ministry a few weeks ago, when we were trying to say, we kind of take the miracles in the Bible and we just sort of rush them. We've heard them so many times. Parting of the Red Sea, water to wine, Lazarus. And one of the things that I shared was, I think the Israelites crossing the Jordan might have been quite a thing to witness, because Red Sea was at night. It's dark, and they went down. So the waters were up, but you just, it's dark. People can't really see that. Yeah. Although you can imagine you being an Israelite walking at nighttime on dry sand with water, a wall of water on each side. That must have been just like, they probably all got to the other side, but was that a dream? Yeah. It's like almost when Peter is walked out of the prison by the angel, and he's walking along saying, is this a dream? I'm not sure if it's a dream or not. Yeah. The waters at the Jordan, that's more of like a plain. So if you take the waters of a river and you stack them up so they can, not only are the Israelites seeing that, but people around the countryside is like, wait a minute, do you see down? Well, is that water? Like up, looks like that water is spout or whatever. Yeah. I think that would have been like just, a mind-blowing moment of like, wait, do I see what I think I see? That kind of thing. To have witnessed that and to see what that looked like and to know that that was probably seen from a distance. And then if you look into the book of Joshua, Judges, the things that come as the Israelites are about to enter the promised land. They're like, hey, we know you guys are you guys are the people of that God who's done amazing things, right? Yeah. So they already have a sense of God's hand, and some of that I'm sure is because they heard of it, right? Yeah. It's like, hey, we've got this million people out in the desert out there, and they're coming our way. Maybe they saw it with their own eyes, like, well, they were over there, and then some, and I saw water standing up for, however long it takes to move that many people across a riverbed. That probably was a seen event outside of just Israelites themselves. Yeah, that's a great event.
Yeah. Well, Pastor Mark, we're appreciative of all that you do. We'll be praying for the men's ministry, the college ministry, the elders. We appreciate for you elders what you guys do for us, and we'll be hoping that we push forward this year. But thank you so much for being on. Take care.
Thank you. Thanks so much. Glad to do it.
Thank you, Mark Hernandez. This also wraps up our conversations with the elders here at FBC. But the podcast won't fall far from the tree, as we will chat with Mark's son Reed next time, going into an in-depth dive on the Mormon faith and their doctrine. We'll see you then.